But first, we have another guest with us.
Oh my goodness. Do you believe that we have Senator Josh Becker with us tonight? Senator Becker has a long-standing history with environmental advocacy, and he has been the driving force for Full Circle, which has supported policy innovations and community organizations in economic opportunity, education, environmental sustainability, and health. Elected to the state Senate in November of 2020, Senator Becker represents the residents of California's 13th Senate District, which comprises of San Mateo County, most of San Mateo County, and northern part of Santa Clara County. Senator Becker, I believe you and I have something in common, our love of tasty cakes from the sweet center of Philadelphia. Welcome, Senator Becker.
That is something we definitely have in common. We will have to talk about that and share some at some point. Well, I just want to thank Lynn, the whole board, for inviting me to speak. Honored to be here with other guests. I did not hear Assemblyman Mullen, but I'm sure he talked very eloquently, including about many issues, including sea level rise. And I did hear some of Supervisor Canepa and his remarks, which I thought were right on and raised awareness even for me on PPE and how we're disposing of all this new things in our lives and how it's affecting the oceans. In the middle of the celebration of Plastover, which is something that we started with friends this year, which is in the holiday of Passover, the Jewish holiday of Passover, to try to give up single-use plastics. And we knew it was going to be difficult to do, and I've already seen how difficult that is to do. But that's part of the point, is to raise awareness for that and raise awareness of the effect that plastics is having in our oceans and in our communities, and to support some really far-reaching legislation that some of our colleagues have, Ben Allen in the Senate and Laura Friedman in the Assembly, on plastics legislation. I'm really happy to be helping lead the charge on climate change. And that's been a passion of mine. My first job out of college back in 1991 was doing environmental consulting and helping the Environmental Protection Agency do two things. One, do regulations around underground storage tanks, underground gasoline storage tanks. And the other part was around helping them start a clean air marketplace conference back in 1991. So very passionate about this issue. I've got 5 bills on climate. And probably the most far-reaching is 24/7 clean energy. So we now have a goal of 100% clean energy in California, but our question is, how do we get there? And so this bill is really meant to be that roadmap to get us there, because we're doing a good job during the day with all the solar now on the grid. But in the peak time, which is now, say, between 5 and 9 p.m., especially in that winter peak when the sun's going down, people are coming home, charging their cars. We're seeing that we're using probably 70, 80% fossil fuels during that time. And so we're not going to get to 100% clean energy unless we tackle those hard to serve times of the day and focus on resources and require utilities to procure clean energy for those times and measure clean energy on an hourly basis. So that's what we're attempting to do there. It's going to be a huge lift, but really excited about that one. And one other area we're working is in cement. You may know cement and concrete globally are 8% of the world's carbon emissions, which is amazing. 8% of greenhouse gas emissions from concrete and cement. And no one's really been able to tackle that in a systematic way, because at the end of the day, people are still going to use concrete. So the question is, how can we make it less carbon intensive? And that's what our bill does. It's really about low carbon concrete. How do we create a market for it? And then create the requirements to we reduce 40% of the emissions by 2030, and then get to 0% shortly thereafter. So those are two of our big lifts. We have another bill that comes out of our experience from folks here locally who want to electrify their homes. And so they're finding it really difficult to deal with utilities. It takes a long time. And so this is really about electric ready homes. We have a goal, just like we did 1 million solar roofs, we want to get to 1 million electric buildings here in California. So all those things will be, are part of our fight against climate change. Another one would remove the sales tax on used EVs. So the goal here is to make EVs more accessible for lower income folks. And so if we focus on certain low used EVs and even high mileage hybrids, removing the sales tax on those purchases, that's another thing we're trying to do in the transportation realm. So trying to take a systematic approach here, while at the same time supporting legislation from my colleagues around things like plastics, and following the lead of Assemblyman Mullen, who's just been unbelievable in terms of helping us really prepare for sea level rise in the region, and think deeply about the ramifications and how are we going to combat sea level rise throughout the whole county. I continue to be in good touch with Senator Hill, who I know is a very good friend of Pacifica, and in fact, he just texted me on something. So continue to learn from him and some of the work that he did to get millions of dollars in the budget to help Pacifica really specifically deal with some of those future challenges. So I'm just really glad to be here today and to be able to collaborate with the county, and just to have someone like Supervisor Canepa be president of the board, who's just incredibly innovative, incredibly forward thinking, and is just so hardworking and ready to tackle these issues any day of the week and weekend, and support innovative ideas. So we're really fortunate to be leading here in the county, and then we can take that up. Kevin and I can take that to Sacramento and say, hey, this is what San Mateo County is already doing, right? So Peninsula Clean Energy, a stated policy of the board, is to get to 24/7 clean energy. And so that helps us. They're probably the only energy producing utility in the state that's going to be supportive of our bill, because they already have it as a plan to do it. So there's a lot of heavy lifting to do, but I'm excited to do it. That's why I went up there to solve problems, and this is a huge one. And I'm just really excited to be here with all of you today.
Thank you, Josh. Not to put you on the spot or anything, but you're the only person on this panel that hasn't seen a Pacific Beach Coalition Earth Day and EcoFest event. Can we count on you next year, and we'll give you a tour of all the events that are going on? So I want to put out an invitation right now.
Yeah, and count me in for any beach clean. It's a great thing with kids too. I was found, like, when you're looking for good activities for kids, that volunteer activities, I feel beach cleanup is number one on the list. So count me up for any of those as well.
It is
solid. That's wonderful. We definitely will. So one way that we can help you, it sounds like, is really by getting on your mailing list and being able to be a voice when you are at the legislature to give you support. Is that right?
For sure. We're really going to need it. We're going to face some really serious opposition on all these bills. I don't know if you know, the Lehigh cement plant's a big cement plant right in Santa Clara County. So we're going to face real opposition on a lot of these bills.
So I'd like to, at this time, we're going to, if it's all right with you both, we'd like to ping pong some questions back and forth for you. And we have some chat people that have been submitting questions on the chat. So we'll be monitoring those. I'd like to ask, I applaud you for addressing the cement manufacturing and the emissions from that. I'm wondering what the emissions might be from plastic production, plastic manufacturing, things like that, because that's, of course, something really near and dear to our hearts that we can see and we're trying to fight. So just throw that out to you guys and see if you have any information on that.
I don't have the exact stats, but it's a major use of fossil fuels is to make plastics, right? That's a major industrial use of our fossil fuel. So to the extent we can cut down on plastics, we also cut down on fossil fuel use. I know that Laura Friedman does have a bill working with Oceana that I think is getting more on the producer side. And then I mentioned that Ben Allen has a really comprehensive bill to help phase out single-use plastics. So been trying to raise attention to that, by promoting this Plastover holiday. But I appreciate you bringing that up. It's major. And so we have to do two things. One, cut down on the use of plastics, and then also find other ways, other ways to produce it that aren't, emitting and that don't use fossil fuels, but that's further off.
Yeah. You have a question?
So the county, COVID really set us back a little bit in terms of single-use plastics, and the city of Pacifica specifically has a ban on single-use plastics, and we know we kind of had to loosen up, but more recently, the county has said you can now bring your coffee mug. How are some of the ways that we can really help move some of that forward? I know in Pacifica, we have Plastic Free Pacifica as an organization that helps to go out and educate people, but you are prominent figures in our community. So when you show up with your own mug, that goes a long way. Is there anything you would add?
Yeah, well, look, I think clearly, when organizations like yours and Deidre, when you weigh in on these very, very critical and important issues, and when you see someone, we have to rethink a lot of these things, right? And I think, we're lucky to have Senator Becker up there just because he understands this. But, traditionally the two go, right? Plastic, you have styrofoam, things that were just absolutely nasty. But there are people who are saying, look, there's different ways to go about this. Why can't we, bring our own plates? Why can't we do these other things that are safer for the environment? And how does that sort of resonate itself in policy? And I think, as we all know, all politics is local, right? And so, as the county, we've dealt with, plastic bags. Obviously, there were a lot of cities at the time when I was on the city council of Daly City, and then Pacifica had passed it, making sure that, plastic bags weren't given, that there was a charge for it. So I think a lot of these sort of issues that sort of pop to the forefront, they usually start at a city level. And I think you're right. I think COVID, we got so focused on COVID and making sure that we're able to deal with these issues, right? I mean, COVID, getting people vaccinated, making sure people getting tested. But we should never sort of forget that huge environmental piece and how it affects other people. And let me just close by this and go back to what Josh had said about Lehigh. As I had mentioned, I've served on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District for a number of years. And where Lehigh sits is rather unique in the community it sits in. And we've heard a lot from the neighbors about Lehigh and sort of what, the emissions at that site. We continue to monitor them. And so we need to sort of rethink on a lot of things, especially around air quality and the emissions, that whether it's a stationary source, meaning an oil refinery, if it's a mobile source, which is driving your car, those sort of conversations need to happen, but we need to take action, because if we don't, the consequences to us, as well as, our kids and future generations, it could become dire.
Thank you, David. I have a question here from a 12-year-old. Says, I'm a 12-year-old excited about environmental activism and achieving environmental justice. However, passing legislation or showing up at the Capitol feel very daunting. What ways can I engage in change?
Well, I'll take that first. We've seen, this is an issue largely driven by young people, and we've seen that in the last year. So I really appreciate our questioner, and I get that too, both from staff and my friends. My kids are 15 and 16, so from their friends, I hear about it. And some of them are organizing locally. And what I noticed is at the city councils, when kids show up, the adults always listen. So in Menlo Park, we passed the first all-electric new building standard. So all new buildings had to be electric. When the when we all testified, they were like, okay, whatever. And then when all the students testified, everybody listened. So I'd say it's city councils, which are, again, doing a lot of this far-reaching work, whether it's plastic bag bans, whether it's all-electric buildings. A lot of this is starting at the city level, or Supervisor Canada probably welcomes them at the supervisors as well. I'm just saying, I've seen it. When kids talk, the adults listen.
Good point. You're absolutely right. And it hits a very emotional chord too when kids talk, right? Because they are the future.
Yeah. You guys both mentioned about bringing your kids to beach cleanups and that everybody likes to come to a beach cleanup, and that's really been a real claim of our fame, right? We have been set up to have a lot of volunteers at the beach cleanups. I wanted to point out that our mission always at the beach cleanups is to give education about the litter that they find so that they go home and look for that same litter and take care of it there. COVID made it possible we couldn't all come to the beach. We couldn't do our beach cleanups. Volunteers saw so much more litter from the PPEs and the single-use plastic. So they volunteered through our Street to Beach program to pick up litter everywhere. And I want to just point out that 6,600 volunteers in 2020 picked up more trash, 25,000 pounds of trash, than we did with 13,000 volunteers plus in 2019. So we understand that the litter is on our streets and our beaches, on our streets and our parking lots is going to the ocean. And if we can stop it there. And, but what we like is that if we can get people, and people are coming to the beaches to do our cleanups before COVID, from all over the Bay Area, and they're getting that message and they're getting that experience. So I guess my question to you is, how can you support more experiences like this for the underserved kids? How can we maybe tap some money to allow these experiences, whether it's coming to the beach or us bringing the beach to them in their community? Because there's a lot of kids that are very passionate. We have our own junior albatross. So is there any way that we can support that kind of educational program to expand the beach cleanups to the street cleanups?
Yeah, I think, Liz, I think it's incumbent. As you know, the county does have Measure K dollars. These are sales tax dollars that are generated. And then it funds a lot of things, but I think as I spoke to you on Sunday, one of the things that I'm looking to do is just figure out how do we get those dollars to your organization so that we can reach out. It's not just a Pacifica issue. It's not just a Daly City issue. It's a San Mateo County issue. And how can we empower people? And these things that you do, they do have a cost to them, right? And in my experience, we expect nonprofits to do everything, but if they don't have the financial backing to do the work, it's really hard for them to do anything. So as we begin to look at our Measure K budget and our our budget on June 30th, I'm going to look obviously with an equity lens, but I'm going to look at organizations like Pacific Beach Coalition and see what we can do to support the work, or look at the Pacific Beach Coalition to do such.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I understand we have a Congresswoman Spear sighting. So I think, Josh, do you have anything to add to that by chance? Is there any funding you can find at the state level to help with education programs?
We should be able to do it. I think, what we really need is, more high energy leaders like Supervisor Canepa. Let's do it. I think especially after COVID, we can rent a bus. Let's get kids from South City. Let's get kids from East Palo Alto, and let's get them out to the ocean and engage both in the cleanup and in the educational piece that you're talking about. So I think we got to just do it.
Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for joining us and for jumping on unexpectedly at different times, and for being so active. David and Josh, I want to just say that, I feel like San Mateo County is a leader. Pacifica is a leader in cleanups, but we have a leadership. And I think once people can see it successful, it's easy to replicate. And I think we have to keep striving and keep shooting for that. And I appreciate you guys' work, and anything that we and our volunteers can do, we are all in.
We support you too.
We support you too. And I look forward to getting on your newsletter. And if we can get the word out to our following, we have a great following of really passionate people. So at this time, I'm going to, we're going to transfer over to the video. You might see Supervisor Canepa at the press conference and the beach cleanup last week. Mr. Becker, I look forward to having you at a beach cleanup and looking forward to seeing your sons or your children as well. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
I owe you a tasty cake.
Thank you, Lynn, for everything.
Save humans, not dolphins. That was the message today as local leaders and volunteers spent part of their Sunday picking up PPE on Pacifica beaches. The Pacifica Beach Coalition organized that cleanup. The group combed Lindamar State Beach, filling up buckets with used face masks, latex gloves, disinfectant wipes, and much more. County Board President David Canepa says while it's important to wear your face mask to protect people, it's equally important to throw it away properly.
We're asking kindly and respectfully, please, with your PPE, dispose of it properly. Don't put it into our streams, our sewer drains, and more importantly, don't put them in our ocean, which obviously they end up at.
The group also picked up cigarette butts and plastic, too.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted, as we transition and try to get Congresswoman Spear on the line, I wanted to share a little bit about the counting that everybody has done. And not everybody counts, but the people that did, and they have an opportunity to record it on an app called CleanSwell, documented these different things that we pick up. And we had a volunteer who kind of found a creative way of showing us some of these results. But I want to applaud all the volunteers that have counted and continue to count what they collect. That's the reason we had that data for the masks and gloves and PPE. And raising awareness about that helps raise awareness about all litter. Our next slide shows some volunteers of our Street to Beach cleanup. There we go. We have, so many people all over the place picking up wherever they are, sometimes at the beach, a lot of times in their neighborhoods or in spots that they know they want to do. And the Street to Beach volunteers have the luxury of picking up whenever, wherever they want. And if they can log it on the Street to Beach, the CleanSwell app, then we can get that data that we share with you. Thank you, Hardy. Next slide. I wanted to invite anyone who would like to get community service hours, students especially. We have a community service hour program where you can pick up litter, and we've enjoyed the services of volunteers from Seattle, up by Canada, down by Los Angeles, Orange County, Pacifica, of course, all over the Bay Area. And we have a program where we can count your service hours and verify them for whatever school or organization you need to verify. So if you're interested in that and you want to become an Earth Hero that gets community service hours, please do look at our website, and we'll show you that in a second. Next slide. This year we are honoring albatross. And we are pledging to learn about it and to teach people about the albatross. We've put together this wonderful resource for anyone that wants to learn about albatrosses, but especially for teachers that may want to bring albatross information into their classroom with their English, math, science, geography, any subject. The albatross can help the kids connect with an animal. And we chose the albatross because it highlights the two big risks and challenges we're facing: climate change and plastic from our shore that floats out into the ocean and gets eaten by the albatross. So you can find that information on our website as well. And then finally, I'd like to just invite you all to become part of the Street to Beach program, to become part, take time in Earth Month to pick up litter, to garden, or to restore habitat, and to record it, either on the CleanSwell app or to send us a picture of what you're doing. I also want to invite you to learn more about albatross with a talk from Karen LaBelle Freed which is going to be on Earth Day itself, April 22nd at 7 p.m. So thank you very much.